who is Coach Frank here? Because you're already starting to share a little bit about the work that you do. You work with men struggling with pornography. It's like you're the subject matter expert. When anybody, a leader or a teammate is struggling with something like this, they call Coach Frank. Yeah. But before we even begin with the work that you're doing, tell us, how did you get where you're at right now? Yeah. Tell us the story.
Absolutely, Damon. I appreciate that, man. And I appreciate you, for opening up, your platform, your studio here today to address this conversation. Mm-hmm. One of my goals, both with today and everything that I do, is to remove that label, though, that you started the show with, that. Right?
Yeah.
If we know that 70% of men are consuming pornography on a regular basis, if we know that 25% of all internet searches are pornographic based, why does it have to be a secret? Why does it have to be something that's sensitive? The mental health crisis is a real thing. And a lot of it is driven by the fact that so many people won't address this. So I want to obviously respect you and thank you for opening it up. But it's always been my goal since I started talking about these things 5 years ago to have that not be the case.
And I have to say this, Coach Frank. Did you hear what he just said? Man, I didn't even know the statistics. I want you to once again say it so that because he just fired out a statistic that's extremely significant. What is the percentage of men that are struggling with pornography and consuming it?
Well, so 70% of men, and this is the ones that participate in a research study, 70% of men admit to consuming pornography at least on a monthly basis. Mm-hmm. Now, if you subtract that down to, okay, what percentage of those men admit to having an addiction or a compulsive behavior that is beyond their control, it's about 10%. Mm-hmm. Once again, I think that there's obviously got to be a big asterisk to that, because in order for me to raise my hand and admit that I'm struggling with porn, I got to be, I've at this point already transcended some of the shame that's tied to it. I would say that probably somewhere between 30 to 40% of the men that are watching pornography right now have a compulsive addiction that maybe they're not fully aware of the impact that it's having on them.
No, I 100% agree with you, Coach Frank. Absolutely. Yeah. Most people are not going to say, "Oh, I have this addiction that is uncontrollable." 100%. There's no way. And even if it's not 70%, let's just say that 1 out of every 2 men was consuming pornography on a consistent basis. That's a problem. Yeah. Right. I mean, not to marginalize if it was 1 out of 10. I'm saying the fact that 1 out of every 2 it's an epidemic. Yeah. And so I agree with you totally. Most people, because of the shame and because of the guilt associated with it, they're not going to admit, "Oh man, I got an addiction to pornography." Yeah. Right. So how did you get here? I mean, why are you so passionate about this? I'm sure our audience, our listeners, our viewers, they want to know, like, what did Coach Frank one day go, "Well, I got to figure out how to save the world today. I'm looking to empower men. I think I'll just I could do weightlifting for them. I can help them, figure out how to overcome, to be more successful." Wait, well, hold on a second. Porn. Nobody's doing porn. I'll just do porn. Of course, that's not the way it worked, right? So tell us the story. Like, what happened? Like, why are you so passionate about this topic?
Man, I think, Damon, much like you, man, I've always felt the call, and I've always felt something inside of me that has wanted to help. It has wanted to be an influence. You mentioned a couple things, bodybuilding, fitness training, business coaching, all things that I've done in the past. I mean, I call myself Coach Frank because I think that a part of how God made me was as a coach. Yeah. I think that that's just a certain, called gift or skill or ability or just something that drives me from the inside. It's to actually help people move their life forward. Even going back to growing up as a kid, like I was the one that was trying to help other kids. I was trying, I was organizing sports. I was doing things. I was always collectively trying to bring people together. Some of that was probably driven by some inadequacies and challenges that I saw within myself, right? Some self-identity issues that I've had to work and kind of, overcome in my life. But at my core, man, I am a coach. I am somebody that wants to help other people move forward in their life. Now, how did I end up in this space talking about this topic? It started with my own journey, despite having some success in the fitness realm, despite having some bodybuilding success, and despite having some early entrepreneurship success, I did struggle for 20 years with a pornography addiction. Much of why I'm passionate to talking about it today is because there's nobody talking about it when I was coming up. Now we live in a different world. Technology is different than it was when I was in my 20s. So maybe the issue wasn't as big and prevalent back then, but I got to think, man, if there was a guy that I looked up to in my early 20s that was having these regular conversations, would my life have been on a different trajectory? Like, had I maybe made some different choices early on about removing and stopping some of the things that I was getting caught up with? So, short story here, man. I found my faith in late 2018 as a 35-year-old man that had really struggled to finding his way in this world. I sought a lot of external material things to fill an empty hole inside of me. And being around some really inspiring men in the business and fitness world through 2017, 2018 led me to finding Christ. And I gave my life to Christ on October 22nd, 2018 in downtown Orlando on Church Street, funny enough. And that began a journey, man, of me really unpacking who I was and trying to get clear and begin to really walk in alignment.
So, it's just interesting. A lot of the people that I have on my podcast, I don't even ask them. Many of them, they have this moment. There's an intersection in their lives, and they meet God. And I'm sure it's God meeting them right where they're at. And right here, right off the bat, you shared that you had a radical transforming experience, and all of a sudden, the new trajectory of your life. Here we are. The reason why I'm just taking this pause is because, man, I've been doing a lot of these podcasts, and every single time people are talking about their faith, it's a driving force. It does something to human beings. And I say this because you just shared that, you became a believer in 2018. Well, for me, 2010 was a year that where I met God, or better yet, God met me. And that changed who I am. And it actually was the impetus of why we're running a nonprofit. Right? I mean, 8 billion people in the whole world. And I believe without a shadow of a doubt that every human being has a gift I call a superpower. And that superpower, many people will never even find that superpower. But we receive that. It's our gift. It's our one. It's what we have. Everyone has their own, right? And the reality is that you're using your superpower to change and empower, to empower men. And I'm using my superpower to change and transform lives in the veteran and military community. So here you are. You had an experience with God, and then boom, in 2018, and where do we go from there?
Yeah, man. I mean, God damn it! I think I told you this when I had you on the Superhuman Life. Our missions and our stories are so aligned, and we're clearly moving in exactly the same direction. I think God is using us in very parallel ways to contribute to the world. Talking about this hole that we have in our heart, man. It's funny. I'll hear atheists say in the same sentence, they'll say, "I don't believe in God," yet every person has a God-sized hole in their heart. One of the books that we prescribe to our men in our curriculum is a book called Surfing for God. It's written by Michael John Cusick. It actually is a book that I heard prior to finding my faith in 2018, and really began to force me to ask some questions, because this was the first time I heard two vulnerable men talk about their struggles with pornography. The author, Michael John Cusick, was being interviewed. But there's a quote in the book that he quotes G.K. Chesterton from the late 1800s. G.K. Chesterton obviously was a great writer, did a lot of work in the Christian missionary space. He's got this quote back from the 1800s that every man that's knocking on a brothel door is knocking for God. And Michael has taken that message and he wrote the book Surfing for God. We're dealing with the internet world today. We have, literally a drug dealer, if you're struggling with pornography, it's in your pocket every single day. So every search in Pornhub, every image that we seek out on Instagram is us seeking something to fill the hole that only God can fill in our hearts. So for me, that became clear in October of 2018. Frank, you've been chasing all these things out there in the world, material success, bodybuilding success, sex, status, whatever it was, to fill this hole inside of you. Well, the only thing that's going to make you full and complete and at peace is going to be if you let God into that hole. So that was the experience for me.
So, we're sitting here and we're talking about our faith, and immediately some listeners out there is like, oh, when we talk about pornography and it's like, it's taboo and all that's a Christian thing. That's just in the church, right? This is all this God talk, right? But in all reality, one of the reasons why I'm having you on this show is because I know a lot of people that have no faith at all, or better yet, it's just culturally, they don't really have a relationship. It's not, they really don't do, the Christian thing. And pornography is literally unraveling their life. It's decimating their marriages. It's killing their families. It's even kept them from being the best leader in their companies, the best leader in the organization. Some people go, well, what is porn? Like, really? Why? I mean, is porn really that big of a deal? I'm just going to sit there and, I'm going to look at whatever and I'll have, an experience or a moment or whatever it is. And it's like that. it's not a big deal. It's really not a big deal. Coach Frank, is it really a big deal? Right? I mean, we're sitting here and we're talking about it. What does porn do in people's lives? Right? I mean, is it really just something that churches talk about? Is it just something that, people who are in the faith-based community say it's wrong? I mean, well, why is porn so bad?
Yeah. I mean, that hasn't been my experience, man. And I think one of the things that's enabled me to succeed to the level that I have is, my faith guides me, right? It's the foundation of everything that I do in this world. But when you hear me talk outside of this little conversation that we're having here, like in our curriculum and the things that we provide from a content perspective, very rarely am I citing any scripture. Very rarely am I bringing church, Bible, God into that conversation. I take a very practical, scientific approach to our recovery. And I think that's what's been able or allowed me to position myself in this field that oftentimes is come at it from a shame perspective, or it is, Bible thumping, or you got to read more Bible, you got to pray harder, read this verse. People don't want to hear that. People want to say, you know what, like, how do I actually take control of this in my life? What are the behavioral changes that I need to do? So yeah, it's obviously got a massive impact that it's having on the church. Things that we've talked about here before jumping on recording today is when I got on the other side of this. So I'll kind of tie a little bit more of my story into this and how it's led to everything. So we talked about October 18th, really finding my faith. It was 4 months later until I really confronted the issue with pornography. So I was 36 years old. This is February 14th of 2019. Wow. I had struggled and wrestled with this thing for 2 decades plus, in and out of quitting, failing, relapsing, keeping it secret from girlfriends, keeping it private, watching it in public restrooms, avoiding social interactions. Like, it had a grip on me like very few people would actually understand. When I really began to confront it, starting with conversations with men in my life, men that I felt safe and comfortable with, saying, hey, I think I got this thing that I'm struggling with. And every single time they'd be like, it's okay, man. Like, you're not the only one. You're not the only unique one about this. So for me, it was getting on the other side of it in 2019, allowing my brain to heal, allowing my brain to reset, beginning to see the world differently, beginning to no longer look at every single woman in my life as a sexual object. Oh, you're a daughter of Christ. Like, you're an actual human being. How can I serve you? How can I love you? How can I show up differently? So without really knowing what was happening, I was changing from the inside out. And people started to see that in me. And people were like, Frank, you're different now. Maybe go start talking about this. I'd always been compelled by this type of content. I'd always been somebody that loved the podcasting space and said, you know what, one day I'm going to have one of those things. I didn't know where it was going to come from, but this for me was the opportunity in July of 2019. I had this story. I'd overcome these things. I had been a self-development junkie. I had been a bodybuilder. I had reached peak performance in many areas of my life, still struggling with pornography. Wait a minute. Are there millions of men out there that don't have the opportunities that I didn't chase some of this peak performance stuff, don't have access to the information that I have? Do they need to hear about this? How can that maybe change their lives? So my original mission back in 2019 was to start a podcast, to share my story and open up a platform to share other people's stories as well. And that was the first 20, 25 episodes of the Superhuman Life. We got very lucky. Apple picked us up and put us on the front page.
Very cool. Very cool.
Early traction.
That's great.
And what was amazing, Damon, is I was already somewhat of a public figure. I don't like saying that about myself because it sounds like I'm, bragging, but there was a presence online, socially. There was an email list that was consuming my content. I was speaking very heavily in the fitness space. We had muscle building programs, was doing fitness coaching. So people were already listening to the things that Frank was saying. Now, when I began to open up the conversation and have the real conversation that men needed to hear, Damon, it was like a swarm of mosquitoes, man. It was like everybody just latched on and said, oh my God, like this muscle bound dude, like this jack guy, like he's talking about these things. Like, let me peek in a little bit, more like what's going on over here. Yeah. And dude, the inbound messages just radically changed. Frank, it was no longer, thank you for your muscle building tips. You helped me get 6-pack abs. You helped me get stronger. Right? I still love hearing that stuff, right? If my fitness content can help you improve your physical life, amazing. But it was like, Frank, thank you for having these real honest conversations. That's right. Both men and women. Yeah. 6-7 months goes by and guys are like, Frank, can you help me? And I'd been free at this point for a year now. I'd done 30 episodes of the podcast. I'm beginning to be interviewed by other people. So I was slowly, I wouldn't even say I was an expert at that point, but I was slowly beginning a little bit of an authority in the space that guys are like, hey, can you help me do this thing over here? Right. The thing that you're talking about, I need that in my life. So Rebuilt Recovery, which is our company now that we, do coaching and programs and really work with guys intimately with, was birthed out of a need of people saying, hey, Frank, can you help us? I was focused on the fitness and I was focused on building a marketing agency. We're having a lot of success over there. So I'm wrestling now. It's like, okay, well, we're doing good things in the marketing space over here, but God is telling me that men need me over here. So I had a radical decision I needed to make in the summer of 2020. This is pandemic, like the world is shutting down. I'm like, I'm going to step away from marketing and I'm going to go all in on this coaching thing. So the summer of 2020, like I've literally left my position in the marketing agency and said, I'm going all in on rehab recovery. So now 3.5 years, and that's been our focus is building curriculums out, having, various communities and programs. We have group coaching, one-on-one coaching. There's a book coming down the pipeline, and it's just been getting in the trenches and figuring out, what's driving guys to get to this thing? What do they need to overcome it? What's the root issues? But then what's that recovery process look like paired with the faith component? So we're going to layer it obviously with a biblical foundation, but then we're going to look at it from the behavioral standpoint, CBT type therapy. We're going to look at it from the holistic health standpoint. If we can heal your gut, how's that going to change the health of your brain? And get these guys, pursuing maybe bigger meanings and purposes in their lives. So